Lily sat nervously in the cozy corner of the cafe, her fingers tapping lightly on the table. The air around her was warm, filled with the rich scent of freshly brewed coffee. She couldn't help but glance at the menu on the wall, her eyes wandering over the different types of drinks and pastries. The prices seemed high, and she quickly turned away, feeling a knot in her stomach. She had been looking forward to this date for weeks, but now that she was here, it felt different. This wasn't her usual spot. She was used to simple coffee shops where the menu was small and the prices were reasonable. This cafe, on the other hand, had an elegant charm, and it made her feel out of place. The soft hum of conversations around her didn't help either. It felt like everyone knew exactly what to order, while she was trying to figure out how to make it through the date without embarrassing herself. Lily had never been on many blind dates, but she'd agreed to this one because she was tired of her usual routine. Work had been tough lately, and her finances were tighter than ever. After losing her job at the small local bookstore, she had been struggling to make ends meet. She had hoped that a date might be a chance to escape her daily worries for a little while. But now that she was here, all she could think about was how little money she had left in her bank account. She checked the time on her phone. He was late. The nerves in her stomach twisted again. She couldn't help but wonder if this was just another date that would end in disappointment. Another person who wouldn't understand what it felt like to be in her shoes. Just as she was about to pick up her phone to check if he had messaged, the door swung open, and a man walked in. He looked around briefly, and then his eyes locked onto hers. It was him, Mark. He was tall, with short dark hair and a confident smile. He wore a well-tailored jacket that looked expensive, but not flashy. His presence immediately caught her attention, and she stood up quickly, hoping she hadn't been staring too obviously. As he approached the table, he gave her a warm smile. "Lily, I'm Mark," he said as he extended his hand. Her hand felt small in his as she shook it. "Nice to meet you, Mark." They both sat down, and there was an awkward silence between them for a moment. Lily shifted in her seat, glancing at the menu again. Her mind was racing, but she tried to stay calm. She wasn't sure what to talk about. She was used to casual conversations with her friends, but this was different. She had no idea how to impress him or what kind of conversation would keep the date going smoothly. "So, tell me a bit about yourself," Mark said, breaking the silence. Lily smiled, relieved that he was taking the lead. She told him a little about her job at the bookstore and how she had been looking for something new. She tried to keep her voice light, not wanting to dwell on the fact that she hadn't been able to find work for months. But she could tell by the way Mark was listening attentively that he wasn't just hearing her words, he was trying to understand her situation. As she spoke, she noticed that Mark seemed relaxed, and his smile was genuine. He told her about his work as a CEO of a successful tech company. He spoke about his team and the projects they were working on, but there was something else behind his words. A quiet strength that caught her attention. It wasn't just his job that made him interesting, it was the way he spoke about his life, as if he had learned to navigate challenges with grace. Lily felt a wave of self-consciousness. Here she was, talking about her small life, while Mark was telling her about the kind of success most people only dreamed of. She wondered if he would judge her for her financial struggles, for not having a job that was as impressive as his. The thought made her hesitate before continuing, but she pushed it aside. This was just a date, and she had to be herself. "Do you come here often?" Mark asked, taking a sip of his coffee. Lily nodded. "Yeah, I come here sometimes when I'm in the area. The coffee's good." She wanted to add that she didn't usually order anything too fancy, but she stopped herself. She didn't want to sound cheap or awkward. She had already mentioned her job situation, and that was more than enough. There was another pause in the conversation, and Lily shifted in her chair again, looking at the menu nervously. She could feel her stomach growling, but she knew she couldn't afford to order anything extravagant. She had already stretched her budget just by coming here. Her eyes scanned the prices on the menu, settling on the least expensive drink, a simple black coffee. It would do. The waiter arrived at their table, and Lily felt the tension rise in her chest. She could feel the weight of the decision before she even opened her mouth. She didn't want to order something too cheap, but she didn't want to look like she couldn't afford anything either. "I'll just have a regular coffee," she said quickly, trying to keep her voice steady. She glanced at Mark, wondering what he would order. Mark didn't miss a beat. He smiled at the waiter. "I'll have the special, please." "Two of them." Lily blinked in surprise. Two. Was he really going to order one for her? She hadn't expected that. She wasn't sure if she should feel relieved or embarrassed. Her mind raced. Should she say something? She didn't want to come across as needy. The waiter left to place the order, and Lily looked down at her hands, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. She had never been on a date with someone so successful. She had never felt more out of place. She wasn't sure how to feel about Mark's gesture, but she knew one thing for sure: it was unexpected. Mark leaned forward slightly and looked at her with a soft smile. "You don't have to worry about it," he said, his voice gentle. "It's just coffee. Let's enjoy the time we have." Lily felt a flood of gratitude mixed with confusion. Why was he being so kind? Was he just trying to be polite? Or did he see something in her that she didn't see in herself? The seconds stretched into what felt like hours. The soft hum of the cafe, the clinking of coffee cups, and the quiet conversations around them faded into the background. For the first time since she had arrived, Lily felt like she could breathe. She hadn't expected to feel comfortable, but Mark's kindness had somehow put her at ease. As they waited for their coffee, she couldn't help but think about how much she had underestimated this moment. What started as a nervous, awkward blind date had turned into something far more meaningful. She wasn't sure where it would go, but she knew one thing for sure: this was a date she wouldn't forget. Lily shifted in her seat, her hands resting lightly on the edge of her cup. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the fluttering in her chest. The coffee had arrived, its rich aroma filling the air. She was grateful for Mark's generosity, but the lingering unease wouldn't go away. She didn't want to seem too awkward, yet everything about the situation made her feel out of place. The cafe was quiet, with soft jazz music playing in the background, creating a serene atmosphere. But for Lily, it felt like the world was spinning just a little too fast. She couldn't help but compare herself to Mark. He had everything together: his sharp suit, his calm and confident demeanor, the way he carried himself. She had only a small bag, worn shoes, and a worn-out coat that had seen better days. She had worked hard for everything she had, but the contrast between them felt more obvious with each passing second. Mark was still smiling, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling that he was too good to be true. He was too kind, too successful. Was he really just being polite? Maybe he was trying to make her feel comfortable. But the kindness felt so genuine, it left her wondering how someone like him ended up on a date with someone like her. "So, what's been the best part of your job?" Lily asked, her voice betraying just a hint of nervousness. She wanted to keep the conversation flowing, to ease the tension she was feeling. Mark leaned back in his chair, taking a thoughtful sip of his coffee before answering. "I think it's seeing the impact we've had, especially in the community. The technology we develop helps people live better lives. It's rewarding, you know." Lily nodded, trying to understand the weight of his words. She knew what it was like to have a job that mattered, even if it was small. When she worked at the bookstore, it wasn't about the paycheck: it was about connecting people with stories, giving them an escape. It was simple, but it felt meaningful. She couldn't say that to him, though. It seemed so trivial compared to what he was describing. Sounds amazing, Lily replied, but her voice didn't match the excitement she wanted to feel. She knew it wasn't the words that were lacking, it was the feeling behind them. She wasn't sure if she was just tired, or if it was the fact that she was out of her comfort zone. She couldn't help but think that Mark probably couldn't relate to the struggles she was facing. After a few moments of quiet, Mark spoke again, his voice softer now. "So, what about you, Lily? What makes you feel passionate?" Lily hesitated. She hadn't really thought about that in a long time. Her passion used to be easy to define. She loved books, she loved helping people find their next great read, but now, everything felt like it was up in the air. She had no job, no real direction, and it was hard to find any clarity in her life. "I used to love working at the bookstore," she began slowly, her fingers tracing the edge of her cup. "I loved how books could take people to another world, you know? But since losing that job, it's been hard to know what comes next. I've been looking for something new, but it feels uncertain." Mark's eyes softened, his expression thoughtful. "I get that," he said. "Life can change so quickly. But it's all about finding something you believe in. You'll get there." Lily couldn't help but feel a little comforted by his words, but the weight of her situation still hung heavy on her. She had to swallow the lump that formed in her throat. She had been trying to stay optimistic, trying to keep the hope alive that she could find her way again, but the truth was, she felt lost. She had no backup plan, no safety net. She was just doing her best to get through each day. "Thanks," she said, offering him a small smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I hope you're right." Mark didn't press her further, but Lily could see that he was paying attention, really listening to her. It made her feel a little better, but the vulnerability still felt uncomfortable. She wanted to shift the conversation to something lighter, something she could talk about with more confidence. "So, what's the hardest part of being a CEO?" she asked, her voice a little more steady now, as she tried to turn the conversation back to him. Mark smiled, leaning forward slightly as if he was happy to share a bit of the burden. "Honestly, it's finding balance. It's hard to keep everyone happy: my team, my investors, my son. It's a lot of responsibility. But in the end, it's worth it." Lily nodded, trying to understand. She couldn't imagine the pressure that came with running a company. She had a hard enough time managing her own life, let alone having so many people relying on her. But she also admired his dedication. It wasn't something that could be faked. As they continued talking, the initial awkwardness started to fade. Mark seemed genuinely interested in what she had to say, and Lily found herself opening up a little more. They talked about movies, books, and the places they'd like to visit one day. The conversation flowed more naturally now, and she found herself laughing at a few of Mark's jokes, feeling a little less self-conscious. But even as they laughed and talked, there was still something unsettled in the back of her mind. She couldn't forget what had happened earlier, when she had admitted that she couldn't afford to order anything more than a simple coffee. It was a moment of raw honesty that had left her feeling exposed. She couldn't shake the embarrassment that had followed, despite Mark's kindness. It felt like she had just revealed a part of herself that she had worked so hard to hide. Mark, on the other hand, didn't seem fazed at all. He never brought up the awkward moment again, and it was almost as if he didn't even notice. It made Lily wonder if he had been in a similar position at some point in his life, if he knew what it was like to feel like you didn't quite belong. As they finished their drinks, Mark's smile never wavered, and Lily felt a strange sense of relief. The date hadn't gone as she had imagined. There were no grand gestures or overwhelming moments, but there was something simple and genuine about it that made her feel like she hadn't failed. Mark stood up, offering to pay for the drinks, and Lily reached for her purse, though she knew she didn't have enough to cover even half of it. Mark waved her off with a smile. "Don't worry about it," he said kindly. "It's just coffee." She couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude, mixed with something else she couldn't quite place. As they left the cafe together, she found herself looking at Mark differently, not as a rich businessman, but as someone who understood that life wasn't always perfect and that kindness was far more valuable than wealth. She had no idea what would come of this blind date, but in that moment, it felt like something important had shifted in her heart. As Mark and Lily left the cafe together, the crisp air felt refreshing against her cheeks. The soft chatter and the clink of coffee cups were still in her ears, but the world outside seemed quieter, more peaceful. They walked side by side down the street, the sound of their footsteps on the sidewalk in sync. Lily was surprised by how comfortable she felt around him now. She had come into the date with so many nerves, unsure of how things would turn out. Yet here she was, walking next to Mark, her earlier doubts beginning to fade away. They reached the corner of the block, where Mark paused and turned to her. "I know it's not much, but if you ever need help with your job search, let me know. We're always looking for good people." His voice was casual, but there was sincerity in it. Lily's heart skipped a beat. He had said it so simply, as if offering help was just part of who he was. Lily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, but at the same time, she hesitated. She had never been good at accepting help, especially when it came to her career. It wasn't just pride, it was the fear of looking weak, of relying too much on others. But Mark's offer didn't feel like pity, it felt like genuine support. She didn't want to turn him down, but the thought of reaching out, of putting herself in a position where she might owe someone, made her uneasy. I I don't want to be a bother," Lily said, her voice faltering slightly. "I mean, I'm sure you're busy with work and everything. I don't want to take up your time." Mark gave her a knowing look, the corners of his lips turning up just a little. "It's no bother at all," he said softly. "I wouldn't offer if I didn't mean it." Lily paused, her eyes meeting his. There was something about the way he spoke, gentle yet firm, that made her believe him. He wasn't just being polite, he was genuinely offering to help. She took a deep breath, and for the first time that day, she let go of her self-doubt. "Okay," she said, the word coming out with a mix of relief and uncertainty. "Maybe I'll reach out. I could use the help." Mark smiled, a warm, reassuring smile that made Lily feel like everything was going to be okay. "Whenever you're ready. No pressure." They continued walking for a little while longer, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. They talked about movies, music, and even shared a few funny stories about their childhoods. As they spoke, Lily realized that despite all the differences she initially thought existed between them, they had more in common than she had ever expected. Mark wasn't just the CEO of a successful company, he was a man who valued honesty, simplicity, and genuine connection. He wasn't trying to impress her with his achievements, he was just being himself. Eventually, they reached a small park, where they both stopped. Mark glanced at his watch and then back at her. "I should probably head home," he said, though his tone was light. "I have an early morning tomorrow." Lily nodded, though a part of her didn't want the evening to end. "Yeah, me too. I should get going as well. Thank you for the coffee, and for everything else." She felt a little shy as she said it, not quite used to expressing her gratitude in such a direct way. Mark smiled again. "It was my pleasure. I'm glad we met." Lily couldn't help but smile back. She had come into this blind date feeling nervous and uncertain, but now, she felt something different, something she couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was a connection. A spark of something real that hadn't been there when she first sat down at that table. Before she could say anything more, Mark stepped closer and extended his hand to her. "It was great meeting you, Lily. I hope we get to see each other again." She took his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch. "Yeah, I hope so too," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. She wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, she felt like there was something to look forward to. With a final smile, Mark turned and walked away, heading in the direction of his car. Lily stood there for a few moments, watching him go, a strange feeling bubbling up inside her. It wasn't just the excitement of a date gone well, it was a sense of possibility. For the first time in a long while, she felt like maybe things could change. Maybe, just maybe, she could start moving forward. As she walked back to her apartment, Lily couldn't help but replay the events of the evening in her mind. She kept thinking about Mark's offer to help with her job search. It wasn't just a simple gesture, it felt like an invitation to take a chance on herself. She had always been independent, always tried to solve things on her own. But tonight, Mark had shown her something different. He had shown her the power of accepting help, of being open to the possibility that other people might want to help her succeed. It wasn't an easy thing for Lily to do, but she knew she had to stop being afraid of asking for support. She had spent so much time trying to prove that she didn't need anyone's help, but tonight had made her realize that it wasn't weakness to rely on others, it was strength. It was the courage to say, "I can't do this alone," and to trust that someone would be there to lend a hand. By the time she got back to her apartment, her mind was racing with thoughts of what might come next. She wasn't sure if this was the beginning of something more with Mark, but she was starting to feel hopeful about the future. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something new, something that could change the course of her life. She had taken the first step, and that was all that mattered. Lily went inside, changed into something comfortable, and sat down on her couch. Her phone buzzed on the table, and she picked it up, half expecting it to be a message from Mark. Sure enough, there was a text from him. "Hey, Lily. Just wanted to say it was really great getting to know you tonight. I hope we can do it again soon. Take care." A smile spread across Lily's face as she read the message. She typed out a reply, "Thanks, Mark. I really enjoyed tonight too. Looking forward to seeing you again." She hit send, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The date had been simple, but it had left her with something far more valuable than she had ever expected, a reminder that even in the most uncertain times, there was always a chance for something new. And with that thought, Lily allowed herself to relax, knowing that for the first time in a long time, she had the possibility of a future that was full of promise. Over the next few days, Lily couldn't stop thinking about Mark. After their date, she had been filled with so many emotions: grateful, confused, but most of all, hopeful. He had been kind and considerate, offering her help with her job search without any hesitation. It felt almost too good to be true. Could someone really be so kind, or was he just being polite? She wasn't used to receiving offers of help, especially from someone she barely knew. But there was something about Mark's genuine nature that made her feel different. For the first time in a while, she allowed herself to entertain the thought that maybe things could get better for her. On a quiet afternoon, Lily received another message from Mark. It was short but thoughtful. "Hey, Lily. I hope your week is going well. If you ever want to grab coffee or chat, let me know." Lily stared at the message for a few moments, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She wanted to reply, but the uncertainty was still there. She wasn't sure what to make of Mark's kindness. Was he just being friendly? Or was there something more he wanted? It had only been one date, after all, and she didn't want to read too much into it. But the idea of seeing him again made her smile. After taking a deep breath, she typed back, "Hi Mark, that sounds great. I'd love to grab coffee sometime. Let's set something up soon." It wasn't long before he replied with an enthusiastic message, "Perfect. How about tomorrow afternoon? Same place as last time." Lily agreed, and they set the time. As the date drew closer, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The connection she had felt with Mark on their first date had stayed with her. She kept thinking about his offer to help her with her job search. Even though she wasn't sure what kind of help he could provide, just knowing that he cared enough to offer was something she hadn't experienced before. It made her feel like maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. The next afternoon, Lily arrived at the cafe early. She wanted to make sure she was on time. The moment she stepped through the door, she saw Mark sitting at the same table they had sat at on their first date. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he stood up to greet her with a warm smile. "Hey, Lily. Great to see you again," Mark said, his voice calm and friendly. Lily smiled back, feeling a wave of relief. "It's good to see you too, Mark." They both sat down, and for a few moments, the conversation was light and easy. They talked about their week. Lily mentioned a few job interviews she had attended, and Mark shared a funny story about a recent business trip. But as the conversation continued, Lily felt like there was something deeper in the air. She couldn't explain it, but it seemed like they were both getting to know each other more than they had before. The small talk gave way to more personal topics. "So, how's everything been with your son?" Lily asked, curious about the life Mark had outside of work. She remembered that he had mentioned his son on their first date, but she hadn't really asked about him in detail. Mark's expression softened as he spoke. "He's doing great, thanks for asking. He's 10 now, and he's always full of energy. It's definitely been a challenge balancing work and fatherhood, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." He chuckled, shaking his head. "It's funny how quickly they grow up. One minute, they're asking for help with homework, and the next minute, they're teaching me things." Lily smiled, imagining the bond Mark must share with his son. She could see the pride in his eyes as he talked about him. "That sounds really special," she said softly. "I can't imagine how hard it must be, though, balancing everything. Work, parenting, it's a lot." Mark nodded, his smile fading slightly. "It is. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough for him, or if I'm spending enough time with him. But I try my best. That's all any of us can do, right?" Lily could relate to that feeling. She had never been a parent, but she understood what it was like to worry about doing enough. She had spent so much of her life trying to get ahead, trying to make her parents proud, and she was still figuring out what her path in life should be. She couldn't imagine how difficult it must be to juggle so many responsibilities, especially when it came to something as important as raising a child. "I think you're doing a great job," she said sincerely. "It's clear that you care a lot, and that's what matters most." Mark looked at her for a moment, his eyes softening. "Thanks, Lily. That means a lot to me." They both sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation lingering between them. Lily could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't expected their conversation to go in this direction, but somehow it felt right. She was learning more about Mark than she had expected. And in turn, she realized that she was opening up to him more than she had ever expected to anyone. It felt natural, almost like they had known each other for longer than just a few days. Lily took a deep breath and decided to change the subject. She didn't want to get too serious too quickly. "So, what's the next big project you're working on at the company?" she asked, her voice light. Mark smiled, grateful for the shift in the conversation. "Well, we're in the middle of a major product launch right now. It's been a lot of work, but I'm excited about what we're building. We're hoping it'll make a real impact." They continued to talk about his work, but this time, it felt different. There was less of the initial nervousness and more of a comfortable rhythm. Lily found herself laughing more, enjoying the conversation without feeling like she was overthinking everything. She could see how passionate Mark was about his work, but she could also tell that he was a man who valued the people in his life, especially his son. After they finished their coffee, Mark stood up and offered to walk her to her car. As they stepped outside, the afternoon sun cast a warm glow over the street. The air was crisp, and Lily couldn't help but notice how peaceful everything seemed. They walked in comfortable silence for a few moments before Mark spoke again. "You know, Lily," he began, "I'm really glad we're getting to know each other better. It's not often I meet someone who makes me think about things in a different way." Lily smiled, feeling her heart flutter a little. "I feel the same way," she said. "I wasn't expecting to connect with anyone like this. But I'm glad we're giving it a chance." Mark looked at her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Me too," he said softly. "Who knows what the future holds, but I think it's worth finding out." Lily nodded, feeling a sense of hope stir inside her. She wasn't sure what would happen between them, but she knew one thing for certain: this date had been different. It wasn't just about the coffee, or the job offers, or the company Mark ran. It was about the connection they had built in such a short time. It was real, and that was something she wasn't going to take for granted. As they reached her car, Mark gave her a friendly hug. "Take care, Lily. I'll be in touch." She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "You too, Mark. I'll talk to you soon." As she drove away, Lily couldn't help but smile. Something inside her felt lighter. Maybe this was the beginning of something special. The following days felt like a new chapter for Lily. After her last coffee date with Mark, she found herself feeling lighter. The uncertainty she had been carrying for months was slowly lifting, replaced with a sense of possibility. There was something about Mark's kindness and the way he had listened to her that had given her the push she needed to start seeing things differently. She couldn't deny the impact their time together had on her. His words, his genuine care, and the support he had offered made her believe in herself again. Lily had never been one to rely on others. Growing up, she had always prided herself on being independent. She had learned to deal with her problems alone, to shoulder her struggles without asking for help. But Mark had shown her a different side of life, one where it was okay to lean on others, especially when they offered help out of kindness and not obligation. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but she felt ready to take the next steps, whatever they might be. She had decided to take Mark up on his offer and reach out for help with her job search. It wasn't easy, but she knew it was time. The old part of her that wanted to do everything alone had to let go. She sat down at her computer one evening, her heart racing as she typed out an email to Mark. "Hi Mark, I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about our conversation, and I'd really appreciate any help you can offer with my job search. I know you're busy, but I'd love to connect sometime to talk more about opportunities. Thanks so much for offering to help. I really appreciate it. Best, Lily." As soon as she clicked send, her nerves kicked in. What if it wasn't the right decision? What if he thought she was taking advantage of him? But then, she reminded herself that Mark had made the offer with no strings attached. He had been kind, and he had genuinely wanted to help. She had nothing to lose by reaching out. The next morning, she received a response from him. Her heart fluttered as she opened the email. "Hey Lily, I'm glad you reached out. I'd be happy to help however I can. Let's set up a time to chat this week, and I'll see how I can assist. I know the job market can be tough, but you've got this. Looking forward to connecting again. Take care, Mark." Lily smiled as she read the message. She felt a wave of relief wash over her. Mark wasn't just offering help, he was giving her the encouragement she needed. She quickly replied, arranging a time for them to meet again. They agreed to meet at the same cafe where they had shared their first date. It felt like the right place, a symbol of how far they had come in such a short time. The days leading up to their meeting passed quickly, and Lily found herself looking forward to it. She wasn't just excited about the job prospects, she was excited to see Mark again, to continue the connection they had begun. When the day arrived, she walked into the cafe with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a while. Mark was already there, sitting at the same table they had shared before. His smile, warm and welcoming, made her feel instantly at ease. "Hey, Lily. Good to see you again," he said, standing up to greet her. She smiled back, feeling the familiar spark of comfort between them. "It's great to see you too, Mark." They sat down, and the conversation started just like the last time, easy and light. Mark asked how her week had gone, and Lily told him about a few interviews she had attended. As they talked, she could tell he was genuinely interested in her progress. He offered her advice on how to approach her next interview, sharing insights about what employers were looking for and how to stand out. His guidance was thoughtful and practical, but there was something else in the way he spoke, something that made her feel capable, even when she had her doubts. After they finished their drinks, Mark leaned forward slightly. "You know, I've been thinking about you since we last spoke," he said. "You've got so much potential, Lily. I can see it. Don't let this stage of your life hold you back. You're just getting started, and I know you'll find your way." Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had heard encouragement before, but the way Mark spoke to her felt different. It wasn't just about finding a job, it was about believing in herself, about pushing through the fear of failure. She had always doubted herself, thinking that she wasn't good enough or that she didn't belong in certain spaces. But Mark's words made her feel like she deserved success, like she could reach her goals if she just took the steps forward. "Thank you, Mark," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I really needed to hear that." Mark smiled, his eyes sincere. "Of course. You've got this, Lily. I believe in you." They spent the next hour discussing her job search in more detail. Mark offered to connect her with a few people in his network who might be able to help. He even gave her the name of someone he knew at a company she had been interested in. Lily felt like the weight of her worries was lifting, bit by bit. The more they talked, the more confident she felt in her abilities. This wasn't just a business meeting, it was a conversation that made her believe she could take control of her future, that she wasn't as stuck as she had thought. As the meeting came to a close, Mark walked her to her car again. This time, there was no rush to say goodbye, no awkward silence between them. It felt natural, like they were picking up where they had left off. "Lily," Mark said as she reached her car, "I'm really glad we met. I know we don't have all the answers right now, but I think you're on the right path. Just keep going, and things will fall into place." Lily smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't had in months. "I really appreciate everything you've done for me, Mark. You've helped me more than you know." He gave her a reassuring smile. "Anytime, Lily. I'm always here." As she got into her car and drove away, Lily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had the strength to face it. She had the support of someone who believed in her, and that made all the difference. The job search was still ongoing, and she knew there would be challenges along the way. But now, she wasn't alone in it. She had Mark's encouragement, and she had learned something valuable: it was okay to lean on others, to accept help when it was offered. And most importantly, she had learned to believe in herself. As the weeks passed, Lily's confidence grew. She found a new job that challenged her in all the right ways, and she was excited to start this next chapter of her life. She kept in touch with Mark, grateful for his continued support. And while they didn't know exactly where their connection would lead, Lily knew that their meeting had changed the course of her life. It wasn't just about a job or a date, it was about a new beginning, one that she was ready to embrace with open arms. And with that, Lily felt ready to move forward, one step at a time.